So we are live. If you want to start introducing Kanani. Oh, Kanani, do you want to start the introduction?
Okay. Aloha, velina mai kako. Mahalo everyone for joining us this evening. Since 2018, Na'ai Kanio Maui Cultural Center has been hosting the free public event through HK West Maui Community Fund Kanaka Scholar Series. This series is co-sponsored by HK West Maui Fund, the University of Hawaii Maui College Hawaiian Studies Department, and the Kue Petition. Lectures occur monthly. The series features a host of new and established scholars and innovators and their research work on Hawaii and Hawaiian communities. And we proudly present this to you through via Zoom and live through HK West Maui's Facebook page. Tonight's presentation, Mahiʻai, our farming is our stewardship because our resources are our relatives. Johanna, Kapōmaikaʻi Stone is from Kailua, Ko'olau Poko Oahu. She enjoys learning and teaching Hawaiian through the growing of food and medicine, the observation of celestial patterns, through practices that cultivate the health of body, and through traditional stories and other primary resources. She is committed to Hawaiian agriculture and aquaculture practices, and how our food is grown while growing abundance of our ecosystems, and the Hawaiian food system and how they are needed also for our stewardship practices for Wahipana, our place. Pomai receives her bachelor's degree in psychology and her Hawaiian language, as well as her master's in Hawaiian language from the University at Mānoa. Pomai currently teaches at an elementary level Hawaiian language. Everybody, virtual round of applause for Kapōmaikaʻi Stone. Mahalo.
Mahalo nui e Kanani. So I think I do have to be oh no, I can share my screen. Okay. Okay, let me share my screen. Okay. So like this. Okay, we looking good? I think so. Okay, mahalo nui to Kanani and mahalo nui to Bianca for putting this together, and mahalo nui to the HK West Maui Kanaka Scholarship Series for having me. So the presentation we're going to be looking at today, guys, and I encourage you guys to ask questions. We'll have a question period after because we want this to be a conversation, more a two-way street versus a one-way street. Okay, so we're going to look at Mahiʻai and how our farming is actually our stewardship. In some paradigms, we talk about stewardship and growing food as if they're two different things, but for us here in Hawaii, it's always been the same thing. So whether it's how we're growing the productivity of the land, or whether it's our response to climate change, it is how we grow food. It is our farming. Okay, so look at this. Our farming is our stewardship because our resources are our relations. Our oral histories tell us that we are related to all things, and in fact, we are the younger sibling as humans. So we're gonna look at how our resources are our relationships and how our farming actually is our stewardship because it improves the land and the ocean. Okay, mauliola ika mahiʻai. So mauliola is the word we're gonna look at for to thrive, literally thriving life essence. And we can be mauliola because of our mahiʻai, because of how we farm and cultivate the land. And just a quick look at our title right here. Hawaiian agriculture and aquaculture systems. Our food systems can restore equity in social systems. That means heal our people. How can we heal our people? By feeding everyone. Yeah. The question we can ask ourselves is, does everyone have enough to eat? Yeah. Is everyone's basic needs met? Yes or no? If not, there's things we can do. And I propose growing food. And while we grow food and heal our people, we're also restoring our ecosystems. We're healing our aina as we're healing our people and growing food. Let's see how. Okay, again, mahalo e Kanani for the introduction. My name is Kapōmaikaʻi Stone. I'm a kumu maka'olelo Hawaii, and I'm just a haumana. I'm just a student in Mahiʻai in farming. Our beautiful lo'i at Kanewai at UH Mānoa. Okay, so just a quick introduction of where I come from. I want to invoke the place where I come from and the elements of our aina to come with me and aid me in this presentation to us. So he keiki papa ke ia no kailua ko'olau popoko. I am a child from generations back of Kailua ko'olau poko, and this is one of our mountains here in the background, Olomana. O kamalanai koma kani o kaua popo kapa koma koua. Our wind is the malanai, and one of our rains is the ua popo kapa. I am invoking these two elements now to assist me in this presentation. O kamakalepo koma ko kahawai. Our river is Kamakalepo. I also invite Kamakalepo to aid me in this presentation. O Konahua Nui Komako Mauna. Our mountain is Konahua Nui. This is the highest peak of the Ko'olau Mountains here on Oahu. I am invoking Konahua Nui to come aid me in this presentation. O Kauai Nui Komako Loko Wainui. This is one of our two fish ponds here in Kailua, Kauai Nui. Believe it or not, under all this grass is water. And believe it or not, for thousands of years, this water fed our people with fish. And it still can, should we choose to steward it. O pueo hala koma ko wahinoho kahi o ka pueo e kauai makahala. Wa kaulana o kailua I ka ulu hala. So the place where we live now is called Pueo Hala, and it's named because it is a place where the pueo are seen sitting in the hala. And Kailua is actually famous for its groves of hala. Okay, a quick mo'olelo real fast for us, guys. This is called Noka Ilio Mo'o. It is about this brindled dog. So in the time of Ka'ahu Manu, she was ono for Ilio, dog, and she was ono for Poilehua. So she called on these two farmers, Kanaka Li'ili'i and Kanaka Ole, to supply her with food. They did so. And upon taking the food from Kailua to town, traveling upon the pali, a mo'o wahine, we can call her a lizard woman, actually called upon the dog that was already dead to come out of his calabash, and the dog actually came back to life, jumped out and ran away. This dog's name is Poki. And so shocked, the farmers went to Ka'ahu Manu and had to tell her, hey, your food just came back to life, so we have nothing to give you. And so Ka'ahu Manu was shocked, but she forgave them anyway. So I'm dedicating this presentation to these two honest farmers, Kanaka Li'ili'i and Kanaka Ole, for cultivating the soil of Mauna Wili, where we come from the time of Ka'ahu Manu and before. We are honoring them for feeding our people. Okay. So everything based on this, in this presentation, guys, comes from my experiences, my observations, from other kumu, other farmers, other elders, also from scholarly papers, speeches, presentations, from our oral histories, and also from our newspaper articles. Okay, so those are my sources. And now let's go back to Mahiʻai. Our farming is our stewardship because our resources are relations. When I say our resources are relations, we know this because our oral history tells us so. Our creation stories tell us who was born first and who was born after. The humans are always born last after all the creatures. And in one of our stories of creation, the very first kalo plant and the very first human, the very first kalo plant was born as a stillborn child, and then his younger brother was the very first man. So we see, at least in this one example of this creation history, we are younger siblings to the kalo. And as younger siblings to all creation, we have a duty to take care of them, yeah, so they can nourish us. And we also look in other creation stories like the Kumulipo. We see that all these things, everything in the reef, the limu, yeah, the fish, the birds, even the turtles, even the rats, the pigs, the dogs, and the ope'ape'a, the bats, even the chicken, were all born. Everything was born before us as humans. Even the pahu itself, we see in the Kumulipo, is born before the humans. So as the younger siblings, we have a responsibility and we're obliged to take care of everything else that comes before us because we depend on it. Everything depends on it. Okay. And so this is another creation story, different from the creation story of the first kalo, different from the creation story of the Kumulipo, of where Kane created everything. And in Kane created everything, he calls upon the forests. Yeah. I na helela I ki nohi nohi e, ai aho I ua ki nohi nohi e. And he calls upon there to be birds in the sky. I manu no ka lewa, I ano ka wai, I ahu ki nohi nohi e, ayaho I ua ki nohi nohi e. Yeah, he calls upon the birds, he calls upon that there may be fish, that there may be forests. And then after, Hanai hola o kane o ku o lono ya kumu honua he Kanaka, he poki'i no na mea I hana ia. A ua hana ia o kumu honua ma hope iho o ka hana iana o na holoholona. So after creating the forest, after invoking that there be birds in the sky, fish in the water, Kaneku and Lono make Kumuhonua, the very first human, and they make him as a younger sibling, a Poki'i, for all things. Okay? Kumuhonua was created after all the animals. So in these quick 3 creation histories that we've just seen, the humans are always the youngest sibling, the youngest relative. So we see here that our resources are all our relatives, and thereby I assert that we have a responsibility to steward them into perpetuity. Okay, so again, Mauliola I ka Mahiʻai, we can thrive, we can be Mauliola because of our farming, because of our Mahiʻai. Again, how our food systems can heal our people by giving everyone enough to eat, at the same time healing our aina. Let's look at some specifics. So Mahiʻai literally means to cultivate food. So for the purposes of this presentation, I'm going to be talking about cultivating food on the land, as well as cultivating our fish in the ocean. Okay. Okay. And I assert that our value of ho'okipa as Hawaiians to host others and to share abundance is based on the success of our Mahiʻai. Because what we cannot share if we have nothing to share, right? When we have plenty, then we enable ourselves to be able to share with others. So the only way that ho'okipa, hospitality, can be such a high value for us as a people is if our Mahiʻai systems are highly efficient. So it's only because we grow food in the highest, most efficient way that we can share with others. Okay, this is evidenced here in this pule. I'm gonna do a quick pule for you guys. E ku ike o lo value I o lo valu ka huli ka makalua ka ua I o lo valu ke kalo I o lau ka Mahiʻai I o lo ka hono hale I o la ka ohua I o la ka ohana I o la na malihini kipa mai I o la ia'u ia Kapōmaikaʻi a mamaua no ala Mahalo for giving me that space to do that pule. In this pule, we see that the farmer is offering his intention to grow food so that the people in his house may live, so that he himself may live, so that dependents, the family may live, but also so that the visiting stranger may live. Iola na malihini kipa mai. So we see that just in this one pule of Mahiʻai, we're not only feeding our nuclear family, we're feeding any malihini that might visit. So the purpose of our farming is to feed our community. Okay, this is a good olalo no ea for us to look at. Na ke Kanaka Mahiʻai kaimu o nui. Yeah, it is the farmer, yeah, the one who tills the soil, who has the imu that's filled with food. Yeah, the well-filled imu belongs to one who tills the soil. And the imu is never just for one person. Yeah, the imu is always for the community to eat. So it is the person that tills the soil that has plenty food to put in his imu. And what is that plenty food to put in your imu for? It's to feed our people. Okay. Olelo Akamo'i no Mahiʻai. This is Kamehameha Eha, Alexander Liholiho. He wrote an article in the newspapers in 1856 before the Farming Association. We have some good quotes from him. So his good quotes say, O ka Mahiʻai ana I ka aina, o ka hoʻomaikaʻi ana I ka honua, a me ka hoʻoulu ana I na mea kanu. O ka oia o na hana pau a Kanaka e hana ai. Ua haʻule na hana ea pau ke hoʻohali ke ia meia, no ka mea oia no ke kumu o lako a pau. Farming the land, improving the earth, growing plants are the utmost superior deeds out of all the things that people can do. Everything else pales in comparison because it is the source of all things. Let's take a look at this other good quote here. O ka mahiʻai o e ka makuahine o ka vaivai. O ke kālepa ana he kaua wale no ia nana. No ka mea nana e lawe nā vaivai o loko mai o ka mahiʻai I kela moana ke ia moana I kela kihi ke ia kihi o ka honua. Farming is the mother of wealth. Economies are simply servants for her because it is the economies that bring the goods from farming to every ocean, every corner of the earth. So this is basically Kamehameha Eha encouraging us to grow food on our land. Yeah? Oh yeah, no. Okay. And so I wonder if I can get rid of this. Yes, I can. Okay. So we're going to look again at Mahiʻai, cultivating food. And in this broad category of Mahiʻai, I'm including growing the food like a lo'i, an irrigated field, a mala, a non-irrigated field, and loko i'a and lawai'a, fish pond, and our traditional fishing methods. Okay. So another good quote from this very good book, Oihana Lawai'a. O na oihana nui a hano hano I hola no ke ia o kokako la hui mai ka ho'okumu iana o kokako aina. Mai a kumo honua mai a ya papa a me wakea. O ke ia o hana lawai'a a me ka oihana mahiʻai. So this guy, Kaneva Nui, he was a newspaper editor, and he asked this author of this book right here, David Kahaulelio, to write a series on the fishing occupation. And so he tells his people in this newspaper of why these are important professions for us to document and to continue to engage in. So the professions of fishing and farming are important, honored professions of our people from the establishment of our land from the time of Kumuhonua through Papa and Wakea. So, and then beautiful translation, of course, by Puakea. And so these are occupations, Mahiʻai and Lawai'a, that we've always done as our people throughout this whole ocean, this whole Pacific Ocean. And these are the pillars that uphold our society because it sustains us. Okay, so let's look. Let's see how Hawaiian agriculture and aquaculture systems, our food systems, restores health to ecosystems, how it heals our aina. We have witnessed in our food growing practices that water quality improves. We've observed the water is cooler, there's less bubbles, it is flowing water, it's not stinky. These are signs of healthy water. We've witnessed improvement of the soil. The soil is darker, it's not stinky, it's a little fluffy, it's not super dry, hard, and compact. So we've witnessed just by growing food in a traditional way, which is what would be quote unquote called organic, without any poisons, that we're improving water quality, improving soil quality. There's less mosquitoes because it's a balanced environment. There's things that eat the mosquitoes like i'a and toads. Toads can eat the mosquitoes. And we also see an increase of limu and opai, increase of our algae, shrimp, of course, increase of i'a. And we also see our manu Hawaii, our Hawaiian birds. When we see our Hawaiian birds in our lo'i, in our mala, and in our fish ponds, we know that the ecosystem is becoming healthy again. And of course, we're doing all of this by growing food. We're cleaning the aina, improving the water, soil, and growing food at the same time. This is what I'm gonna term a Kanaka enhanced ecosystem. Yeah, an ecosystem that is getting better because we are participating in it and engaging in it in a good way. Okay, so I just want to be clear that these systems, for example, this lo'i system and this loko i'a system is improving all these aspects of the aina while growing food. Okay, that in itself it should be an obvious common sense things that we should engage in. That's already a win-win situation. Okay, and so the two specific things that we're going to look at tonight, this evening, is something called kipulu and kapu. Kapu, we're going to look at the basic restrictions we honor in our fishing practice and even in our fish pond practices. And a kipulu, we're going to specifically look at lo'i and mala, so irrigated and non-irrigated fields. And the specific type of kipulu we're going to look at is called po'i. Okay, so kipulu is any kind of mulch fertilizer. And the specific type of kipulu that we're gonna look at is called po'i. It's where you cover all the lepo. Yeah, all the soil is completely covered. And it's a basic weed barrier, moisture barrier, and it's a fertilizer. And the second thing we're gonna look at is kapu and lahui. So kapu, any kind of restrictions on specifically what we're fishing. So these are species restrictions, size restrictions, and seasonal restrictions throughout the year to let the fish breed and give birth. And we're also going to look at this term lahui because we're going to compare other fishing restrictions to our cousins throughout this whole ocean, throughout Polynesia. And the main term that is used outside of Hawaii is called lahui, and that is the same as our word lahui. So our word lahui, even though maybe not commonly used in this usage, but it also means to prohibit or to restrict. Okay. So let's go to look at kipulu. So kipulu is a way to ho'omomona lepo. It's a way to enrich the soil. Okay, so if you look here, we're being taught how to po'i, how to prepare the bed to plant our kalo. So at first it's all grass. That's the first step. And then we flip the soil, we turn it over so the grass is on the bottom and it's just soil on the top. And that's tilling the soil. In this area, they call it tahuri lepo. Yeah, kahuli lepo. And then we put a layer of banana leaf and then a layer of coconut leaf. Okay, and we also did this here at our mala at Windward Community College. We put our layer of banana leaf. And then we put a layer of the coconut leaf, the launiu. And that's po'i. It's pretty beautiful. And that is our fertilizer. That is our weed barrier moisture retainer. There's almost no weeding, right? It's working harder, not smarter. No. Smarter, not harder. Just joke. And it's being more efficient with our energy. We don't want to spend all our time weeding. We'll just cover the ground and that's good. We can holomua after there. Yeah, after that we can progress. Okay. When we use the system of po'i, we've seen increased productivity. We have more kalo, bigger kalo. And it's a more efficient use of something that would otherwise be opala. So we have a pile of leaves sitting over here. All we have to do as humans is put the leaves over here onto the area that we're going to grow food. And now we've just made 1,000% more efficient system, because otherwise, if we didn't put those leaves on the place where we're going to plant, it's just going to be a pile of leaves. And eventually it's going to go into the aina, yes, but we can increase the efficiency by helping those dead leaves contribute to making our food. Okay, and we don't have to buy things like other kind of fertilizers. So with kipulu comes certain kind of values in the system. We see that, okay, if I can take something, that otherwise wasn't being used and put it in a certain area to help grow the food there, well, that's creating a relationship, a pilina. And we see the value of kokua kekahi ikekahi, helping each other. The coconut is friends for the kalo. The Mahiʻai is also friends for the kalo. How are they friends? They're helping grow the kalo. He hoa ka niu a me ka Mahiʻai no ke kalo. The coconut and the Mahiʻai are friends for the kalo by contributing their bodies to grow the kalo. We also see this value of kahiku pono. Kahiku pono, we can say, is appropriate place. What's the appropriate place for things? In this work of kipulu, we're taking something that otherwise would just be rotting in a corner and we're putting it in its proper place. We're putting it in the place to grow food. And so it's thus more efficient that way. Okay. And the last value we're going to highlight is Kapōmaikaʻi Stone, improving the land. What are the current ways that America grows food? Does it improve the land or does it cause detriment to the land? I would say in some cases, it definitely causes detriment to the land, especially if we're growing with poisons. But the way that we've always grown food here in Hawaii, it's always an improvement for the land. And that was for everyone's survival and ability to thrive, really. Okay, so as humans, we have to remember, there's a foreign conservation paradigm that we need to keep the humans out and preserve it and it can't stay the same. No, as humans, we have to interact with the environment in a good way. And we can actually help the aina. The aina can be better with humans who know how to improve the land, who have that value system. So, I suggest that us as humans, we remember how to interact with the land in a good way and start improving upon it. Okay, so a few things, and I'm interested to hear your guys' thoughts about this. These are the things that I have used myself, have been told or have read about for different kipulu, different mulch fertilizers, and some of these are different forms of po'i, different things to cover the ground with. This is a really good picture of seeing the po'i. Yeah, the entire ground is covered and just the kalo can grow. And look, it's covered like in its entirety, all the way to the edges. Okay, so I've covered with banana before, coconut, even loulu. I've been told by Manaleo Kumututi Kanahele that her uncle actually po'i'd, covered the soil with panini, cactus. He would take the cactus, take off the skin, and the inside is kind of like aloe, it's like gelish. He'd put the cactus skin with the gel side facing down, and that's what he would cover his garden with. I thought that was so interesting, hoi hoi. And there's also, of course, people who mulch fertilize with la'i, with tea leaf, put it around their plant. We can also fertilize with ashes, lehu. And there are also those who put amendments to their garden like low kukui leaves to help feed their plants. Okay, so these are some great original ways of kipulu. What are the current alternatives that we're currently using to kipulu with? Poisons. Okay, so these are the traditional ways we improve the land. Are our current alternatives working? Yeah, is there any downside to poisons? I don't know, maybe it hurts the bees. I don't know, maybe it hurts the water supply. I don't know. Okay, so there are choices that have stood the test of time. Okay, and I encourage us to remember those, and let's do that. Let's engage in it. Okay, so there's some scholarly writings of this thing called po'i. We're gonna look at this book real fast. Kamo'olelo Hawaii by David Malo. So bear with me as I read this for us. Mahalo for your patience, guys. A'ole e like ka Mahiʻai ana o nā aina wai me kona aina kula. E waile wale aku no i ka mauʻu ko kula. E like no me ka mana'o ana ua nui ka mala. Pela no i mana'o I mala kalo. E eli ka makalua a hahau I ka lau kukui. Ki pulu lehu paha, lepo paha a leila kanui ke kalo. Pela ma kauahi a kanu wale ma kauahi. E waile mo no ka mauʻu a puhuli ka ai I nā mana'o e po'i no I nā e po'i ole no. Pela no a hala na malama he umi kumalua a leila o ke kalo o ka ai no ia. Okay, so he talks about, okay, farming lands with flowing water is different from the dry plains. When you're in the plains, you have to remove plenty grasses, you have to weed a lot, depending how large you want your garden. If the intent is a taro garden, you have to dig the holes for the taro clippings. Oh, this is the kipulu part, guys. Put in kukui leaves. Okay, that's evidence of one style. And perhaps ash fertilizer, perhaps soil. Then plant the taro. That's how it's done in some places. In some places, they just plant. Okay. Continue to weed the grass until the shoots start to grow thick. If the intent is to cover, po'i, cover the ground, then cover it. If the intent is not to cover, then don't cover. Then leave it. That's how it is. 12 months have passed, and then the taro, that is the food. So this is, we've documented some of our different types of kipulu, and specifically po'i, covering the ground. Okay. And now we're looking at different instance for po'i on ni'ihau. He aina uala o ni'ihau, he kula wale no ia aina, he uala ko leila ainui, he uhi, he ko, he maulo I kalo no nae ma waiu nae, he uuku no nae. He po'e kaika ko leila I ka Mahiʻai, he nui na malama e waile mua I ka mala. A po'i mua I ka ma'u a Mānoa noa, he nui na malama e waihoai a uhina ka ma'u o luna. A leila kanui ka uala, ka uhi paha, ke ko paha. Okay, so Malo is telling us, Ni'ihau is a land for growing sweet potatoes. It only has flat plains. Their main food is the uala, sweet potato. There's also yam, sugar cane, some taro patches in Bayou that are small. The people there are strong in their farming. There are a lot of months spent pulling the weeds in the garden and first covering the garden with grass until it's thick. So a thick layer of po'i. It's left for several months until the top is covered with grass. And then you plant your sweet potato, your yam, and your sugar cane. This is a great picture here, guys, for us to see the po'i. Notice that cardboard is incorporated. So this is modern usages of things that this is what is available. That's what they cover their ground with. So notice it's a combination of cardboard and launiu. Yeah, coconut leaf. Okay, beautiful, the po'i. Okay, this is also another good picture of the po'i. Yeah, you see this section here, closest to the camera, it still needs to be tilled, yeah? The soil still needs to be flipped. You see him flipping his soil, tahuri te lepo, and you see the cover of the coconut leaf, and then you see the kalo. Okay, so more writings on po'i. This is from Kepelino, yeah, this writings. Okay, Kapōmaikaʻi maoli ka lāhui Hawaii ke pauli ke nā lima makahana. Ke po'i ana I ke kalo makona I Hawaii. So specifically in kona Hawaii, this method is from, in this instance. I ka wae ulu ai ke kalo, a leila iki kona maula, a leila ho'omaka ia hana, he hana nui no. E kolua e hala paha, a leila pa'a ia kiha pai ke po'i. Po'i he uhi ke ano. O ia ka uhi ana o na kaua a pau o ke kiha pai, a pili I ka huli ma ka mau'u. E nā mau'u mai ka ino ke po'i o ke aiki, o ka mana, o ka ama'u, o ka lau awa puhi, o me ka mau'u kukai pu'a. O ia ka mau'u mai ka iloa no ke po'i, o ia ka mau'u ai o nā mau'u ea e he mai ka I u'uku. Okay, so Kepelina tells us, blessed are the Hawaiian people when our hands are all occupied in work. Covering of the kalo in kona Hawaii. It's a specific method documented from Kepelino from kona Hawaii. When the taro begins to grow and the leaves are a little developed, the work to cover the ground commences. It's a large task, takes 3 or 4 days until the entire patch is covered. Po'i is the method of covering. It is the covering of all the spaces in the patch up to the huli, the taro clipping, with grass. Here are the good grasses to cover with: the aiki fern, the mana fern, the ama'u fern, the ginger leaf, and the kukai pu'a grass. These are excellent grasses to cover with as mulch, for they are all grasses that produce food. Other grasses are all right. So we notice in this method of po'i, we're doing all these things at once. We're mulching and fertilizing, weed barrier, moisture barrier, and we're taking something that would be not contributing as much in the corner as being opala, and we're making it even more contributive by giving it its proper space to be. Okay, and so one last writing from Kepelino on po'i. E ake kahi, ale pono ke po'i honua I ke kiha pai, me ka ola o mua ole ia o ka huli e ola o mua, a malo o ka ola o ana a leila popo'i. E kiolo ho ina mau'u ino I kahi e ka hono hono, he mau'u ino loa ke la, he mau'u ma ke ole a ma ke noho I ka aiaia. O ia hola na loina o ke po'i ana. So Kepelino tells us, here's something else. Not good to just cover the patch without first weeding. Yeah, the huli. First weed it and let it dry, then cover. Throw the bad weed somewhere else. The hono hono grass is a very bad weed. It does not die and the kalo dies because of it. These are traditions of covering the patch. So notice that we see in this description of po'i that you plant it first and then you po'i around it. In the method that we learned here in these pictures, you cover first, you po'i first, and then you poke holes to plant. So we see some variations in there, which is cool. And we see our beautiful picture of the po'i. Nania. Okay, utilizing kipulu. So e kipulu kako. Let's start to kipulu more. Yeah, and all at one time. Yeah, we can raise awareness and education and remind ourselves and re-educate ourselves of our traditional kipulu practices. And we can distribute so it's better utilized. Yeah, we can, you know, if we have extra low hanging around that we don't need, we can distribute that to each other in our communities. Here on Oahu, we already have green cans, so we're already separating our opala. Yeah, so I propose let us all have a communal kipulu and let's share so we can all mulch, fertilize, and cover. Okay, we're gonna move on to lawai'a, to fishing. This is a pule before we go fishing. Yeah, this is written by Kealaka'i in the newspaper Kahai Hawaii. And so this is one pule that he describes that the fisherman does before embarking upon his task of fishing. E ale ka ulua, e ale ke kahala, e ale ka ula, e ale ka hananui, e ala, e amai ka he maunu palu, he ono. Ai oi e ke kahala, ai noa moni noa ka opu. E kue kuua kua I ka moana nei lae. Ai kai ui ka mauna kaua, pa'a ea pa'a I ka ho'au, kia hoa kaua ea. E kuua kua I ka moana nei lae, a mama oi e ku, a ka haliu ko nuku I kai a halapa I kai kua I la. e kue pa'aia I pa'akai'a kaua. So basically, the fisherman is asking all the fish to eat his bait. He said, "O ulua, e o kahala, o ula ula." Yeah, here is the bait. It's an octopus, a soft bait. Yeah, he's encouraging the fish to come and eat his bait. Indeed, eat and swallow. Swallow until the stomach. Okay, so that's one pule we see upon embarking in Lawai'a. And this is a pule we see upon embarking on the eating of the Lawai'a. None of you guys can tell in this picture here, but all this, these two kupuna are sitting on are i'a. I do believe it's opelu. And they're drying the i'a. Yeah, this is choke i'a. Okay, let's see this pule. E kahikina, e ke komohana, e ka ākau, e ka hema, e luna, e lalo, e kala, e ike ia'u, I ka lawai'a. E nana I ka ohumu, I ka huahua, he mua ka ua, he hope ka ua. E ike o ia'u, e ka la ua, e ka la mālie, e ka la makani o ko ula ho'i ia, ko ke Kanaka lawai'a. I lako I ke aho me ka mākau. E kala e ola ia'u I ka ua hine, ko u keiki, ko u mau makua, a mama ua noa. A ka haliu ko nuku I ka aha lepa I ka iku ai la ua au ai ia. Okay, so similar to the first pule we saw for Mahiʻai, we are offering our pule so we can feed not only ourselves and our nuclear family, but strangers. So we have this Lawai'a, O to the east, O to the west, O to the north, O to the south, O above, O below, O the day, see me the fisherman. Notice this murmuring about fruitfulness. He's referring to the prayer. The rain is first, the rain is last. See me, O rainy day, O calm day, O windy day. It is my day, the fisherman's. So we are well supplied due to my fishing line and hook. O day, nourish me, nourish my wife, nourish my children, my parents. The prayer is done, the restriction is lifted. So this is a prayer to allow us to feed ourselves, right? That's the goal of our Mahiʻai practices on ocean and in the land. Okay. So this is another great quote from Kaneva Nui, specifically about our fishing practices. Ua huli ia na ko'ai au kako e na kupuna I halamua aku me ka ho'omanawa nui. A ua ho'ike ia aku ia mau ko'ai ka lako mau keiki. A pela aku ana. He mea maika'i e huli aku kako I ke kahi o ke ia mau ko'a. A ho'omau popo no kako ke ia pūmaika'i o ke ia mua aku. Oh wow, we almost power rating. Okay. I gotta go more fast. Okay, so Kaneva Nui, again, he was the editor of a newspaper. He asked Daniel Kahaulelio to write a whole series on the occupation of fishing. And he says that our ko'a, our fishing grounds, were sought by the ancestors with great patience. And these spots were then revealed to their children. So that's how that knowledge was passed down. And it is Pōmaikaʻi, it's Maikaʻi. It's worthwhile for us to go seek and to remember these fishing grounds, these ko'a, for our own future benefit, for our own Pōmaikaʻi. So he's calling us to remember and seek out the fishing grounds that our ancestors sought after with patience long ago. Okay, I'm gonna have to speed through. E ai ke kahi, e kapi e ke kahi. This is our good olelo no eau for our concept of kapu. That's because kapu is, honoring restrictions, and withholding from harvesting. So e ai ke kahi, e kapi e ke kahi. Eat some and salt some, said to young people. Eat some now, save some for another time. It's basically what kapu is, right? You eat some and then you leave it in the ocean for a future time. Beautiful picture by Kaikea Nakachi and the great work that they do at Ka'upulehu. Okay. Along with this concept of kapu, restrictions on species and seasons, there's values that come with this, just like the values for the kipulu. We see the values of being disciplined, not taking during certain times, the value of stewardship, malama, and the value of ho'olui na lahui'a. We're growing the fish populations, and we're still taking during certain times of the year. We're growing the fish populations by allowing them to breed and give birth. So we're honoring na koe hanawai, the birthing seasons, and this gives us our ko lawai'a, our fishing seasons, no na koa ko. So we can fish in perpetuity. That's the whole point of kapu. So we'll always have enough forever. Okay, another beautiful picture by Kaikea Nakachi. Okay, 3 specific i'au we're gonna look at. Ama ama, opelu, and aku. Okay, And so in terms of utilizing kapu, I say we should have a kapu in every ahupua'a. And some of the forms that this kapu has taken is called a CBSFA, Community-Based Sustainable Fishing Areas. So we can remind ourselves, build awareness, re-educate ourselves, build back our consciousness about this, and re-implement. I propose re-implementing in every district. And we already see some districts being the forefront of that progression, and we should follow suit. Okay, there's things like rest zones where there's absolutely no take. There's 2 ones, they're actually called try wait and no take. And those are good steps into re-implementing the kapu. Okay, let's look. Okay, so this is a newspaper article from 1925. I'm just gonna read this one paragraph. Okay. Maka ho'okapu ana I ka ama I loko o ke ia mau mahina e kolu a ka ha'awi ana I manawa no ka ama kai e hana huai e hiki ana ke ho'olava mau ia. I'm gonna put this away. Oh no, I can move it here. Ke ho'olava mau ia ka lehulehu me na ama I loko o ka makahiki holo oko'a me ka ho'opiha I ana o na loko me na pua o na ama nunui ke ho'olilo aku ma ke ku'ai mai loko mai o ka loko. Ai loko na ho'i o ka manawa kapu ole o hiki ke ki'i ia na ama o loko o ke kai. Okay, so, perfect, cool. Okay, so we just see in this newspaper article, this is from 1925. It tells us that the ama were kapu during 3 months, December, January, and February. And it says the restriction of ama for these 3 months gives the open ocean ama time to give birth. So why? So the masses will always be supplied with ama for the entire year. And so you can fill the fish ponds and that they can be sold. And in time without restrictions, kapu ole, the ama can be fetched from the sea. So we see this in our newspaper article. We are withholding for 3 months, so we are supplied for the entire year. That's the concept of kapu. It's stewarding collective resources for the communal good and also for the good of the fish populations. Yeah, so this is incredibly efficient. Okay, let's look at the kapu. So because we're kind of running out of time. So this is writing by Malo, and I'm going to kind of go fast. He tells us of 2 fish, the opelu and the aku. The month of Hinaya ele is the time to grab opelu, and the aku restriction is lifted. Yeah, if anyone eats them, they will die. And in the month of Ka'elo, that's when the opelu starts to be kapu, to be restricted. Yeah, and in the month of Ka'elo, the restriction on aku is released. Okay, so one season you can fish opelu, you can't fish aku. The other season you can fish aku, you can't fish opelu. And it says over here, okay, that these fish make the dry season and the rainy season clear. So the opelu is fished in the dry season, the aku is fished in the rainy season. It also helps us tell time. Okay, and these are the main fish that are worshipped, the opelu and the aku. Okay, that's some writing from Malo. Okay, now we're gonna go to our communities that are already doing this great work. Great, awesome work from the Ka'upulehu Ohana. They have a marine reserve. It's a no-take area for 10 years. Okay, so they're now seen with their no-take area. They're only, what, couple years in. They're seeing big schools of veke, pualu, uhu, and manini, as well as healthy coral, limu, and opihi, and vana. Okay, and like huge increases in hogfish. I'm not sure what is hogfish, but 30% increase in uhu, 46% increase in kala. And they also have a council of kupuna, and I believe a council of, they work with some of the landowners. And I believe they also have a council of community fishermen members. Yeah, so that's key for community education, enforcement, and monitoring. Council of Elders, Council of Fishermen. Okay, and this was because they saw a 90% decline in our fish, which is probably, Pai Aina wide, our entire archipelago. So I assert that, a no-take area is a good first step, but eventually humans are going to have to interact with that area eventually. So that could be the next step, would be implementing the kapu, the restrictions for the species and the season of fish. Okay, another great community, Ha'ena Kauai, also created their own kapu system, their own community-based sustenance fishing area. This is their area. It's usually a mile from the shore. Okay, so they have all kinds of things, like they have restrictions on what you can collect, whether, like if it's a poo-poo, it has to be empty. There's gear restrictions, no breathing devices basically, and restriction on how much we can take. Oh, let's go back. Yeah, 2 lobster per day, 5 vana max, 2 he'e max, no spear guns, no night fishing period, and absolutely no commercial activity. These are these rules that the community has decided on. Another community doing great work for CBSFA stewarding our eat-up populations is Mo'omomi, Hawaii. Look, that is no kapu, taking too much fish, versus just taking 2, okay? And so this is a good quote from Kapōmaikaʻi Gregor. It's essential to honor the ethos of indigenous Hawaiians, which is only take what you need, because the freezers, before there were freezers, the fish were left in the ocean till it's needed. You shouldn't be coming to fish and gather unless it's your responsibility to care for the resources. Okay, and this was an article, this is a beautiful picture. And this was an article because commercial fishing interests were interested in fishing in this waters. Okay, so I'm gonna skip that. So this is the kapu area that the Mo'omomi community and the Molokai community has decided on. They proposed this, it's a mile from shore. These are the specific species that they're looking at, the kumu, uhu, and the ula. I like this, let the fish hano. That's pretty much the goal of kapu. Okay, so this is their specific species, also moi, kole, and this is the decline they've seen in their lobster, their ula. This is the reason we need to steward in a traditional way with kapu, with restrictions. Okay, so these are their specifics. They have specific species, they have size limits, they have gear limits. There's not any recreational activity allowed, swimming, snorkeling, diving, because they want to minimize disturbance to the nursery. Yeah. Okay, another great community, Miloli'i Hawaii, who's also proposed CBSFA rules to re-implement their kapu. This is a great slide from Ka'imi Kaupiko that, you know, as a community, they've decided to do monitoring, lawai'a camps. They're still gonna allow their traditional opelu fishing, and they do the monitoring, and they also do the enforcement, okay? And it's to increase the abundance and the sustainable harvest of their fish. This is, you know, we are a people who rely on our fish in the ocean to be healthy, so we can be healthy. Okay, another great community who re-implemented kapu here on your guys' moku, Kipahulu Maui. Yeah, same thing, harvest limits, size limits, seasons. Yeah, moi and ula closed from May to September, and gear restrictions. Yeah, no scuba, no rebreathers. Okay, okay. This is just the great work that the Kipahulu community is doing to increase their opihi populations, increase all these reef fish populations. Okay, I like their opihi rest area. They're doing their monitoring. And I think also another place is Pupukea on Oahu that is currently a no-take area, but they do have a proposal to become a CBSFA, a community-based sustainable fishing area. So they do want to re-implement their kapu. So I'm excited to see their great work. And we might have to end it with this. So these guys, Friedlander, Shakarov, and Kittinger, looked at Ni'ihau, Kalaupapa, Miloli'i, Koho'olave, and Mo'omomi, and found that scientific surveys of various locations in Hawaii show that locations under community-based management with customary stewardship, kapu, harbor fish biomass that is equal to or greater than no-take areas. So they found that communities following kapu have the same amount of fish or more than an area where you no-take it all. So no-take versus taking with kapu is equal, and taking with kapu is some instances even better. So in terms of harboring the fish populations. So while harvesting, we're actually growing the populations by not taking during certain times of the year. Simple as that. Okay, and so I was gonna go all over Polynesia to look at different areas in their kapu, they call it tapu, rahui, ra'ui, ahui, and kahui. But I do believe we're almost pau, and I do want to leave time for questions or any kind of contributions from anyone, any comments, any mana'o. But just know that henua enana in the Marquesas, they also practice kapu. Tuamotu, where's Tuamotu? Right here, Marquesas right there. Yeah, in the Society Islands, ni'amatai, raromatai. In the Astros, tu ha'ape, even Rarotonga is like over here, Aotearoa is over here. These are all places that still today enforce and regulate themselves with kapu. They restrict their fishing seasons during part of the year. Sometimes it's 6 months, sometimes it's 3 months. Sometimes they have a different type of seasonal places where you can fish and where you can't fish. But they're all still doing it, and it's all so we have enough food for all. Okay, so I'm gonna go through this fast. Okay, so in Tuamotu, they have restrictions on certain fish in their ocean. They actually have a kapu for coconut. Okay, in Marquesas, they actually have a kapu on ulu. You cannot take too much ulu. This is still Marquesas on certain types of fish, the stingray, the shark. In Rarotonga, they even have a little mele here, pretty much saying, hey, you better look after your aina or you're gonna lose it. And I like that. And their kapu is to not impede the flowing water. And also they have kapu on their lagoons for 6 months out of the year. So half. Yeah, so half the year, no fish, eat pig and chicken. Okay, these are their signs. I like their signs, they're so cute. Yeah, so still to this day, if you see this sign, you cannot take anything from the ocean, yeah, if you're in Rarotonga or Manaya. Okay, so we also have this place called Rapa. Boom, boom, boom. The Rahui, yeah, or the Ra'ui, their restriction system, their kapu, is a part of the general desire for maintaining natural resources to ensure the community's food supply and their survival. Okay. So in this island called Rapa, they also have a council of elders and a council of fishermen to educate and enforce. And we're gonna go through it a little fast. And basically, here, this is why the people on the small island of Rapaiti today strongly value a communal relationship with the natural environment as a condition for their well-being and peace. Yeah? Population of Rapaiti manages the land to live on and cultivate the marine fauna and wild animals that constitute a food resources on their land. It's a collective resource stewarding. Okay, Whakarava, they also practice their own type of rahui. Okay, let's see. Okay, in Aotearoa, they also practice rahui. I like the definition of rahui or restriction in Aotearoa. It refers to the means or device to restore the productivity of the land or to allow the mauri, the life essence of a resource or resources to replenish. That's why we have kapu. That's why we have rahui. That's why we abstain from taking certain things during certain times of the year so they can replenish. Okay, this is some signage from Tahiti, their rahui action. Really like that sign too. And we can, in Tahiti, there's those who can still read the stars and know the time of rahui, the season of the year where there's restrictions, based on the stars 45 minutes after sunset and 45 minutes before sunrise. When it's Taurus is in the west and when Scorpio is in the east, that's their time of restriction. And this is an awesome series that Lily Kala and Hiro Nui put on every Wednesday. And I love it. That's where I got this information from. Okay, so basically, mahalo nui for your patience, guys. I'm excited to hear if you have any mana'o or questions. Basically, to sum it up, we cultivate the abundance of our ecosystem. We increase productivity, right? We still taking, but we only taking during certain times of the year. So we're allowing populations to grow. And that stewards even more fish than areas where take it all. That's crazy. That should be common sense for us. Okay, so we increase productivity to ensure a plentiful harvest for the collective. Our harvesting actually increases populations and we're healing the aina. 2 specific methods we looked at, kipulu and kapu. Okay, remember, we steward this way because these are our relatives. These are our older relatives. And our food systems heal our people and heal our aina. Heal our people by enabling us to feed each other, and heal our aina by improving it, improving water and soil and growing food. Okay, so I'm trying to summarize this. So basically, you know, our Mahiʻai practices allow us to be nourished through healthy food and environment. That in itself is healing our people. This restores our people, yeah, by feeding them and giving them a healthy place to live and cultivating the land at the same time. This enables us to share resources efficiently to provide for the basic needs of all. Question, is our society currently providing for our basic needs? Yes or no? If not, there are alternatives to the current way we're looking at, okay? And you know, in the Hawaiian lineage here in Hawaii, we've always cared for all. We've always made sure everyone had enough to eat. We see this in our mo'olelo. There's this mo'olelo here of Makale, or this is Kawainui, and there were 3 work days at Kawainui. A boy went to these 3 work days. He didn't get his take-home share of fish. Everyone else got their take-home share of fish. And because of this, all the fish in the fish pond disappeared because he led them out of the fish pond. And it was because he didn't get his take-home share of fish. So because of this, the ali'i them had to rectify this withholding from one person. This tells us that our value is that everyone is cared for. Nana ia na kanaka apo. If one person is not cared for, and then the ali'i have a punishment due to lack of resources, or in the form of lack of resources because of not giving the take-home fish to this one boy, that shows us that everyone is supposed to be cared for. Okay, and this here is a quote. We had a chief, his name was Manuia. He had recently been to England, and he was actually eating fish raw. There's a Scottish botanist that was with him and said, oh, you should learn some table manners. And so he said, that's how he liked to eat fish, raw. And then he also said he saw plenty of poor people in England, but there's none here in Hawaii. That they got plenty of poi, taro, and fish, and no want for anything like many a man at this person's home, England. So we're seeing the Scottish guy getting kind of disgusted because one of our ali'i was eating the fish raw, and he's like, oh, you should have some manners. And he said, you should talk about manners because you have people in your country hungry. And in my country, people aren't hungry. They have enough to eat. Okay. We also see this in current day, like on Mauna Kea. As some of those were taking a stance in Mauna Kea, you could go to Mauna Kea, you could get food, healthcare, childcare, education, and cold weather gear in a tent if you needed. That is a continuation of our tradition for caring for all. So that's always been the way we do things in this land. I propose that we grow food to straight up give away to our community in the form of food bank or food distribution systems, but that's how I see a way for us to heal ourselves, by feeding each other. Okay, mahalo nui for your patience, guys. I'm summing this up. Our food practices maintain health and balance through maintaining the cycles of nature, ensuring planting forever. These are collective resources for the collective good, and our ecosystems are enhanced through our cultivation practices because our resources are our relatives. Okay, I'm pretty much po. Mahalo nui, guys.
Mahalo nui, Kapōmaikaʻi.
Mahalo nui.
We didn't have one question was just asked by Marsha if the presentation would be available as a resource.
Yeah, we can, yeah. I wonder how we can put that up, Bianca or Kanani, if we...
Okay. Yeah, we can try and figure out. Actually,
Yes.
sorry, just got a question. Nakawa pale. If you're familiar with Mahipono, and what is your opinion of their farming methods and use of resources?
I am not too familiar with Mahipono and how they grow food. Do they use poisons? Do they use like fertilizers, pesticides? Because if they do, I would say that organic methods are better. Methods that don't poison are better. I would say I don't know if I want to say suspicious, but I don't know if they are actually pono. I think it is up to them to prove their own contribution to the community. If they really are pono and they're mahi, they mahi in a good way, they're mahi pono, then that means just by growing food, they should be improving the water quality, the soil quality, all these things. So I patiently am optimistic, and I would invite them to be stewards of their own aina, and let us be the judges of how good or maybe not so good mahi pono's practices are. If they use poisons, I encourage them not to. So, yeah.
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 That's pretty much for the most part. That's the questions that we have. I guess when you were going over the different types of things, we had like somebody asked about the hauku fronds and the invasive ginger stalks.
Like how if we can mulch with those?
Yeah, I guess using them as a type of compost kind, or yeah.
Yeah, I would say, you know, there's definitely room for us to experiment, and yeah, let's try it. Let's try all of it. And if it works for our specific place in our aina, let's continue. If we're noticing like insects, or if we're noticing it's stinky, then, you know, maybe we can try something else. But yeah, let's experiment. So let's, you know, that's what our ancestors have always done. We just see if it goes good, and then we continue. And so, yeah, I encourage like mulching with all those things, as long as it's not stinky. I say maikai, and let's observe. Let's see if the food reacts well to it, if there's plenty of it, if it likes it. We kind of have to be, you know, experts of our own environment. But yeah, I totally encourage all of that.
Kalamai. Yeah, one other Bernice.
Oh, yay.
She asked, was crop rotation practice, I guess before?
I would definitely say yes. Absolutely. I know it's currently practiced, and it just kind of makes sense, right? It's like you let an area rest, and then you kind of try a different crop to grow there. So I would definitely say yes.
Okay. That's pretty much all the questions that we had. So, mahalo.
Mahalo,
Okay.
mahalo,
Mahalo.
mahalo, Bianca. And if I could just read this last quote, because I think it's kind of important for us, that simply he lahui ai ka lahui Hawaii. We as a Hawaiian people, we're a fish-eating nation. So I believe we're indebted to our relatives to steward the harmony, right? Through kapu, through not taking. And this is one last great quote from Umia Liloa. Malamai ke kanaka nui, ke kanaka iki, ke ika elemakule, ka luahine, ke keiki, ika ilihune a me ka mea mai. We have to care for important people, meek people, elderly people, children destitute of the sick, right? We must care for all of us, all of each other. So mahalo nui for joining the conversation, guys. Mahalo nui to Bianca and Kanani.
Mahalo Kapōmaikaʻi. I'm really sorry I was on mute for a bit of this.
Oh.
I just wanted to mention that a Claudia Imperato wants to connect with you about limu. And yeah, there was a few more comments that maybe you should take a look at. It's on the Facebook. Thank you so much. This is awesome. I want to see your PowerPoint too, if you don't mind sharing it. So yes, thank you so much.
Mahalo.
Mahalo nui. Okay. All right. Aloha.
Aloha. Share. Okay, cool. Okay.
Mahalo.